Under a rain-soaked overpass, Mike raises a torch. Sodium light cuts harsh grooves across his face. In a classroom, Amanda freezes mid-sentence. A strip of blue system light washes her eyes, and an ad jingle slips out like an insect. Vertical screen live stream. Mike removes his mask, tip counter skyrockets, and he whispers to an unseen deity, "Give her 30 more minutes." Common People, the first episode of Black Mirror's 7th season, can be summed up in one line. When life goes paper month, love turns into debt. A working-class couple signs a life subscription that parks Amanda's consciousness on Rivermind's cloud. Every tier hike keeps her breathing while stripping another layer of their dignity. Forget neon cyberpunk flash. The show sticks to everyday grays and blues that feel more like surgical lights, forcing us to stare at our own bank app balances. Here's the setup, spoiler-safe promise. Amanda collapses with an inoperable tumor. Rivermind swoops in. The surgery costs nothing so long as Mike can cover a £300 monthly fee. 6 months later, the Plus plan drops. 6 months after that, only the luxury Lux tier keeps Amanda lucid. Desperate to keep the meter running, Mike dives into a punishment for tips live stream called Dumb Dummies, swapping bruises for cash, and discovering there is no bottom to this financial pit. The episode isn't just another tech-run-amok scare piece. It reads like a parable about a subscription-based religion. Rivermind sells indulgences in monthly installments. By the higher tier, by a little more existence. It's capitalism with hymnals and dashboards. One mystery lingers off-screen. Early drafts ended with the system crashing under its own weight. In the final cut, people pull the plug themselves. What's Charlie Brooker hiding? The fragility of the tech, or our willingness to pay tithes for our own cage? That's the trail we'll follow next, unpacking creative motives, near-deleted scenes, and the price tags hidden behind every upgrade. The question isn't whether the mirror shows the future. It's whether it's already reflecting the latest bump on today's membership fee. Brooker says the seed for the episode sprouted one afternoon when his favorite podcast slam cut to an ad for laundry detergent. The abrupt tonal whiplash, he joked, felt like a hostage situation. That moment became the spine of Rivermind's pop-up jingles, and the first outline for Common People was actually a dark workplace comedy where ads kept interrupting a couple's marital fights. Drafts shifted once co-writer Bisha K. Ollie joined the room. She pushed the premise from annoying tech to subscription religion, arguing that real terror lies not in malfunction but in perfectly logical upcharges. The rewrite stretched a 38-page teleplay into a 1-hour tragedy and replaced the original ending, Amanda glitching into slapstick ad copy, with Mike's mercy killing. Brooker credits Ollie for insisting the story, quit winking at the audience, and punch them in the gut. Director Ali Pankiv, fresh off season SXS Joan, is awful, wanted the world to look painfully normal. She shot in drizzly London and sleepy Essex cul-de-sacs on an Alexa 35, leaning on the camera's new low-light sensor so street lamps could serve as key lights. The crew nicknamed the palette Banal Sci-Fi because it makes a Tesco parking lot buzz like a spaceship corridor. The choice wasn't just aesthetic. Fewer lighting rigs meant the episode came in 14% under the lighting budget, freeing cash for a full CG brain implant cross-section that flashes for less than a second but took 3 weeks of rendering. Mid-shoot, an unplanned twist hit when Rashida Jones suffered a mild concussion after slipping on a rain-soaked classroom set. Instead of shutting down, Pankiv rewrote the day's schedule so Jones could record Rivermind's disembodied VO lines from a quiet soundstage. Paradoxically, that injury produced the haunting calm of Amanda's ad-read voiceovers that run under several scenes. Jones later called the accident method acting by gravity. The most fraught decision came in post-production. Netflix executives flagged Mike's final gesture, walking back toward the live stream clutching a box cutter, as potentially self-harm glamorization. Brooker resisted trimming it, citing the series' history of ending on unresolved dread. After a week of notes ping-pong, they struck a compromise, color-grade the blade to a dull gray and dialed down the sound mix of viewers cheering in the live stream chat. Brooker later quipped that the scene is still bleak, just 12 decibels quieter. When the smoke cleared, Common People was locked at 59 minutes 48 seconds, the exact running time of Black Mirror's debut episode, the national anthem. Pankiv says she timed it deliberately, a quiet homage to the show's roots in ordinary horror. And despite rumors of runaway costs, Netflix's final audit showed the episode finished 3% below the season average, evidence perhaps that the scariest stories don't need neon or drones, just a monthly bill that never stops arriving. When watching Common People, what disturbs you most isn't gore or glitch or some dystopian drone. It's how painfully ordinary everything looks. Director Ali Pankiv and cinematographer James Friend construct a visual grammar of slow suffocation. Muted grays, weak halogen light, claustrophobic framing. The camera never rises above eye level. We're always trapped on the ground, just like Mike. Take the school scene where Amanda first collapses. The framing is sterile, static. An overhead fan spins slowly above her head like a clock ticking toward shutdown. The fluorescent lights flicker just once. And when Amanda hits the floor, we get no crash zoom, no dramatic cue, just a low-angle still shot of a child's drawing on the wall behind her, a smiling stick figure under a sun. The juxtaposition is unbearable. Hope is still there, but it's irrelevant. From this point, Pankiv gradually drains the screen of color. Compare Amanda's hospital awakening, light-drenched warm, to her Rivermind Plus subscription scenes. The lighting turns cold, the shadows longer, the sound design subtly layered with mechanical hums that don't exist in the earlier parts. By the time we reach Lux, Amanda is surrounded by soft focus filters and surreal lens flares, because luxury, as sold here, isn't comfort. It's distortion. Then there's Mike. O'Dowd plays him not as a tragic hero, but a man so exhausted by compromise, he forgets he's compromising. In one of the most quietly devastating scenes, he enters the Dumb Dummies warehouse to sign up for his first stunt. The lighting is almost biblical. Red strobes pulse behind a man in a pig mask, "Bite me," tattooed across his chest. Mike pauses, and for a second we see it on his face. Not fear, not resolve, but calculation. What's this humiliation worth in pounds? And then there's Gaynor, Rivermind's customer rep, played with chilling calm by Tracy Ellis Ross. Her delivery is syrupy, polished, vaguely maternal. She calls Amanda, our treasured common client, with the warmth of a hospice nurse and the control of an IRS agent. She is bureaucracy made flesh. Her job isn't to hurt you. It's to convince you you're doing this to yourself. One of the most telling moments arrives during Amanda's first Plus episode blackout. She's in a cafe, halfway through conversation, when her eyes glaze and her mouth begins spitting a jingle for an e-scooter brand. No one screams. No one even flinches. The barista calmly waits for the jingle to finish. That quiet compliance is the episode's true horror, a world where humans become ad slots and everyone just waits their turn. The world building is subtle but surgical. The Rivermind logo borrows elements from religious symbology. A cloud-shaped brain with 3 ascending tiers, echoing the Trinitarian hierarchy of heaven. Amanda's subscription progression follows the same logic: common, purgatory, plus, limbo, lux, false salvation. Brooker once described Rivermind as a tech company that speaks in choirboy Latin. Its slogan, "Feel present, stay connected," reads like both corporate speak and a benediction. Even set design contributes to the parable. Amanda's home contains a Streamberry branded smart mirror. A callback to season SXS Joan is awful, and her school is called San Junipero Elementary, a nod to season 3. These Easter eggs aren't just fan candy. They reinforce the idea that this world is built on other Black Mirror worlds, a cumulative timeline where privacy, autonomy, and even memory have all been mortgaged one series at a time. And yet, the darkest symbol is the simplest, the sleep timer. By the final act, Amanda can only remain conscious for 30 minutes a day. The rest of her life is sponsored unconsciousness. In one scene, Mike scrolls through Rivermind's app, calculating whether he can afford to wake his wife on her birthday. The screen shows, extend consciousness, 175 pounds per hour, special. Buy 2 hours, get 20 minutes free. Amanda isn't dying. She's sleeping through her own life. And the app even lets you pay for that sleep in bundles. This is where Common People hits hardest. It doesn't warn us about a far-off future. It reminds us we're already here, paying to avoid ads, upgrading loved ones' care, accepting monthly terms of dignity. The question isn't whether we'll end up in Rivermind's world. The question is how many plans we've already subscribed to without noticing. The brilliance of Common People isn't in what it shows, it's in how it unfolds. Its structure mimics the very thing it condemns, a gradual subscription trap. Just as Amanda's life gets carved into tiers, so too does the episode's narrative. Each act upgrades the stakes, the emotional cost, and our complicity. By the time you realize you're watching a tragedy, you've already paid in full. The episode is divided into 3 narrative tiers, each corresponding to a Rivermind subscription level. Common opening, 15 minutes Mike and Amanda are ordinary people making an impossible decision. It feels almost hopeful. Plus, 15 to 35 minutes the constraints set in, geo-fencing, advertising blackouts, the illusion of autonomy. Dread settles in. Lux 35, and surreality takes over. Emotions are customizable, perception is warped, and love becomes a performance budget. This is Rivermind's promised land. It's also hell. This structure isn't just clever, it's psychologically manipulative by design, echoing how real-life subscription models work. You never lose everything at once. You give up a little, then a little more, until you look up and realize nothing belongs to you anymore. The pacing amplifies this. Unlike many Black Mirror episodes that build toward a single twist, Common People opts for a recursive dread. Each time you think things can get worse, they do. Not through sudden shocks, but through bureaucracy, pricing, and silence. Amanda's final cognitive downgrade isn't announced. It just happens. A new status quo is dropped like a software patch. The episode trusts your horror will catch up in hindsight. Narrative tension builds through interface design as much as dialogue. Rivermind's app is ever-present, soothing gradients, compassionate UX, payment confirmations that come with affirmations like, "Thank you for choosing presence." This digital language mirrors real-world wellness tech, turning cold commerce into spiritual caregiving. When Mike buys Amanda 30 minutes of clarity, the interface prompts him, "Would you like to include background music?" This is Brooker at his most insidious, reminding us that UI design is the new moral camouflage. Comparing this episode to past Black Mirror installments reveals both lineage and departure. Like 15 Million Merits, it centers on a working-class man exploited by a spectacle system. Like San Junipero, it explores consciousness stored in the cloud. But unlike those stories, Common People offers no rebellion, no transcendence, no consolation. Even death here is muted, transactional. The final suffocation doesn't feel like liberation. It feels like customer churn. Stylistically, Pankiv leans into anti-spectacle storytelling, a sharp departure from the glossy surrealism of USS Callister or Smithereens. Her lens holds steady. Cuts linger. Performances are underplayed to the point of discomfort. Mike doesn't weep or rage, he deflates. Amanda doesn't scream, she apologizes. The horror is quiet because the real villains are quiet too. Algorithms, policy updates, auto-renewals. That restraint has divided critics. While Radio Times called the episode a brutal return to form, Vulture dismissed it as emotionally inert. Some say it's too bleak, too slow. But those who defend argue that's precisely the point. If you find this story unbearable, ask yourself why it feels so familiar. Academic circles have already begun debating the episode's political message. Is Common People anti-tech? Anti-capitalist? A meditation on care labor? A eulogy for the welfare state? One paper from the University of Edinburgh frames it as late-stage neoliberalism rendered as domestic horror, arguing that the show has finally dropped its last illusion of satire. There's no joke here, just billing cycles. Others note its gender dynamics. Amanda, even as the central patient, is never the decision-maker. Her consent is bundled with her care, wrapped in Rivermind's click-to-agree logic. Is this story about exploitation, or about how society turns even caregiving into a form of control? Some even suggest the episode is a meta-commentary on Black Mirror itself, a series once praised for its unpredictability, now stuck in a loop of grim outcomes and tech cynicism. Common People, then, becomes not just a story about paying to keep a loved one alive, but about paying to keep a show alive. Rivermind's tiers mirror Netflix's own. It's a biting thought. What if we are Mike, and this episode is our Lux plan? High gloss, emotionally devastating, just expensive enough to make us think we're getting the premium truth. When in reality, we're just paying to see ourselves decay, beautifully, and in high definition. At its core, Common People doesn't just tell a personal story, it excavates the architecture of a system. Mike and Amanda are not anomalies. They're systemic inevitabilities, casualties of a world where care is no longer a right, but a product. The episode takes place in a Britain eerily similar to our own, just a few fiscal quarters ahead, where healthcare is no longer underfunded. It's fully monetized. This is not a dystopia driven by collapse. It's a dystopia driven by optimization. Rivermind, the cloud biotech company at the heart of the episode, doesn't operate like a villain. It doesn't torture, it doesn't silence, it doesn't control. It simply offers options. That's its genius. That's its horror. It allows Amanda to live, sure, but only as long as Mike can afford her. It's a business model that weaponizes compassion. There's a chilling moment late in the episode where Gaynor, the customer success rep, tells Mike with utter calm, "We're proud to offer you choices. Not everyone has choices." That line crystallizes the show's thesis. The problem isn't a lack of options. It's that every choice is a form of surrender. What we're witnessing is a transformation of care into currency, and of love into liability. Mike doesn't pay for Amanda to live because he wants to control her. He pays because the alternative is grief, and grief isn't allowed to be free anymore. In this way, Common People lays bare a central contradiction in modern capitalism. It promises autonomy through transaction, but what it actually delivers is dependency with a receipt. You don't become more free by paying more. You simply rent back the pieces of yourself that were taken from you. This logic unfolds not just in Rivermind's pricing model, but in the narrative's emotional economy. Amanda's presence in the story becomes a sliding scale. She starts out as a teacher, a partner, a full human being. Midway through, she's an interface. By the end, she's a line item on an invoice. And Mike becomes a worker not just at his job, but in his marriage, his grief, his own self-preservation. When he joins Dumb Dummies to perform for coins, he's not breaking. He's adapting. He becomes a model neoliberal subject, extractable, performative, desperate, and somehow still smiling. This is the show's most brutal insight. The system doesn't break you with violence. It convinces you to weaponize yourself. Even the idea of sleep becomes corporatized. Amanda's daily 30-minute consciousness window is framed by Rivermind as a rest protocol, a wellness feature, not a limitation. The company's marketing copy even says, "Sleep is sacred. We protect it so you can shine when it counts." This is no longer science fiction. The episode mirrors real-world trends in tech health startups, wearable optimization apps, and premium care packages where time, cognition, and attention are increasingly commodified. In this logic, your body is a subscription service, and death is just the final cancellation. So where does this leave morality? Nowhere comfortable. Because the question Common People forces us to ask isn't, would you kill someone you love, but if the system left you no way to help them live with dignity, would you let them suffer? Mike suffocates Amanda not out of cruelty, but out of compassion warped by scarcity. It's an act of love mutated by economics. The pillow he uses isn't just an object of death, it's an indictment. It represents every decision society has pushed onto the individual. You take care of it. You pay for it. You kill it. But whatever happens, don't make it our fault. And this is where the social allegory comes into focus. Rivermind isn't just a stand-in for big tech. It's a stand-in for any institution, governmental, medical, educational, that has decided to let its obligations go and empower individuals through market logic. The episode speaks to a world where the commons have been stripped, privatized, and resold to us in pieces, each piece more expensive than the last. Even the episode title, Common People, is a gut punch. It evokes the famous pulp song, but twisted. In this world, to be common isn't to be ordinary. It's to be disposable. The tragedy is not that Mike and Amanda are special. It's that they're exactly who the system was designed to consume. After Common People aired, the reactions split the room like a hammer to glass. Some critics called it the most essential Black Mirror episode since San Junipero. Others accused it of bleakness for bleakness's sake. But the sharpest debates didn't happen on Rotten Tomatoes. They happened in forums, group chats, and medical TikTok. The episode touched a raw nerve, especially among care workers, gig economy veterans, and people navigating privatized healthcare systems. For many, it wasn't fiction. It was memory. A nurse in Missouri posted, "That Rivermind app looks exactly like the one my hospital uses to log overtime." A hospice worker in Birmingham wrote, "We've been selling 30-minute windows of dignity for years. The only difference is we don't call it Lux." It's rare for a Black Mirror episode to hit such a precise demographic chord. Common People doesn't just frighten the tech-savvy or the conspiracy-curious. It hits the people who've been living this story in slow motion. One payment plan, one downgraded service, one lost hour of sleep at a time. What's especially devastating is how the episode frames complicity. Mike doesn't work for Rivermind. He doesn't create the system, but he feeds it, through live streams, silence, and eventually acquiescence. The episode isn't just asking who built the system. It's asking who keeps it running. That question points toward a deeper indictment. Systems of power no longer need evil architects. They just need passive participants. Gaynor isn't cruel. Rivermind isn't illegal. The neighbors aren't monsters. But none of them interrupt the machine. Why? Because, like us, they've learned to think in costs, not values. The live stream platform Dumb Dummies is particularly haunting in this regard. It's not some futuristic invention. It's just the logical endpoint of platforms like TikTok Live, OnlyFans, Twitch, but with the pretense stripped away. Mike performs pain. Audiences donate. Algorithms reward frequency. It's humiliation as a service. And when Mike finally removes his mask, the show frames it like a religious moment. He stops being anonymous. He becomes real. And in this world, being real just means being fully monetized. This touches on one of the episode's most uncomfortable truths. There's no heroism in desperation when the system profits from your sacrifice. Mike's live suffering isn't rebellious. It's data. His grief is useful until it isn't. So who's to blame? Is it Rivermind? The audience? Mike? That's where the show becomes morally radioactive. Every answer feels wrong because the real villain isn't a person. It's a logic, a worldview, an algorithmic morality where utility trumps dignity. But the show doesn't let us off the hook either. The final scene, Mike returning to the stream with a box cutter in hand, isn't just about personal collapse. It's about a cycle. He's going back not to end it, but to feed it. Not out of hope, but out of momentum. Which brings us to the real moral crater. Has the idea of human dignity become incompatible with modern economic systems? Common People doesn't offer comfort. It doesn't propose reform. It doesn't tell you how to fight back. Instead, it performs a kind of ethical exorcism, dragging our quietest compromises into daylight. Because the pillow isn't just a murder weapon. It's a metaphor for all the ways we smother others and ourselves under terms of service, under fine print, under silence. And Amanda, she dies whispering an ad jingle. That moment is the moral abyss. It forces a question no viewer can easily escape. When the last thing a person says is a brand slogan, was that person still alive at all? That's the red line the episode dances around. When does survival become worse than death? When does care become cruelty? When does choice become coercion? In asking these questions, Common People doesn't just reflect society. It indicts it. Common People feels like a warning, but only if you haven't already lived it. For millions across the globe, especially in countries without universal health care, the story is simply literal. Brain implants aren't here yet, but monthly payments for survival. Already a fact. Let's start with the most obvious mirror, the subscription model. The episode imagines a world where staying alive is tiered like a Netflix plan. It's a sci-fi extension of something real. Insulin pricing, paywalled therapy, freemium wellness apps. Companies like Cerebral, Calm, and BetterHelp already gate access to mental health care behind monthly fees. Need to talk to someone today? That's a premium feature. The Rivermind Plus and Lux tiers evoke not only Silicon Valley pricing schemes, but the logic behind digital labor platforms. Think Uber, Instacart, TaskRabbit, where even time becomes fractionalized and access to income depends on tiered metrics, star ratings, and algorithmic trust scores. In that context, Amanda isn't just a medical patient. She's a data object, experiencing her own life in 30-minute increments, like a gig worker with no shift autonomy. What Common People brutally exposes is how everything is moving toward micropayments for existence, not just your health, but your attention, your rest, even your grief. What Amanda experiences isn't death by disease, it's slow cancellation by invoice. Even Rivermind's language feels familiar. Its slogan, Feel Present, Stay Connected, sounds nearly identical to Apple's Stay Curious, Calm's Find Your Calm, or Google's Organize the World's Information. These aren't just marketing lines. They're emotional outsourcing contracts where big tech offers not products, but a simulated form of inner peace for a price. So what does resistance look like? That's the most unsettling part of the episode. It doesn't show resistance. There is no revolution, no hacker leak, no miraculous fix. The characters don't rise. They fold. And in doing so, Common People forces us to consider what resistance even means in a world where every act of protest gets monetized before it finishes happening. We've seen this before. Think of wellness influencers who market anti-capitalist yoga packages, or online grief communities sponsored by pharmaceutical brands. The critique becomes content. The pain becomes profit. And yet, buried in the episode's despair, there's a faint glint of something else: endurance. Mike doesn't live stream out of pride. He does it out of love. Twisted, humiliated love, but love nonetheless. And Amanda, even at her lowest, still says thank you before going dark. That's not compliance. That's resistance by grace. A refusal to let the system corrupt her final gesture into cruelty. This is the paradox common people leaves us with. Even when we've lost power, we haven't necessarily lost meaning. It's a dangerous idea in the best way. Because if systems depend on our complicity to survive, then the smallest act of refusal, not upgrading, not performing, not monetizing pain, becomes revolutionary. And so the question isn't just what the episode predicts. It's what it dares us to imagine. What would a world look like where care wasn't conditional? What would happen if dignity wasn't behind a paywall? What if grief didn't have to be monetized to be witnessed? We don't need brain implants to face these questions. We need courage. We need policy. We need each other. Amanda and Mike are fictional, but the system they live in, it's real and running in the background of your life, one auto-renewal at a time. In the weeks following its release, Common People ignited not just reviews, but a cultural aftershock. On TikTok, the hashtag #LuxLife went viral, not as celebration but satire. Creators posted videos of themselves whispering made-up ad jingles while washing dishes or falling asleep, mimicking Amanda's ad seizures. One viral caption read, "POV, you downgraded your consciousness to basic." Memes flooded Reddit, a fake Rivermind subscription chart offering options like Silence Plan, $0 per month, includes occasional screaming, or Couples Therapy Plan, $999 per month, includes pause button. Black Mirror fans weren't just reacting, they were participating in the dystopia, reenacting it, reclaiming it through parody. In academia, the episode prompted panels on death care capitalism, techno-compassion fatigue, and algorithmic ethics. Several universities added Common People to syllabi in media theory and public health ethics. The most cited academic response? A paper titled The Sleep Timer Society, toward a theory of programmable grief. But perhaps the most powerful resonance was personal. Viewers began sharing stories of relatives on life support, priced out medications, or working through burnout to afford elder care. One comment read, "This episode didn't scare me. It reminded me of watching my dad lose himself $300 at a time." Suggested companion films. To deepen the reflections sparked by Common People, here are 3 lesser-known, yet thematically linked films. Never Let Me Go, 2010, dir Mark Romanek. In a world where clones are raised for organ donation, love becomes a rebellion against commodification. Quiet, devastating, and eerily close to Common People in tone. Time Out, L'Emploi du Temps, 2001, dir Laurent Cantet. A man loses his job and fabricates a fake career to keep his family from finding out, exploring the shame, performance, and economic hollowing of identity. Advantageous, 2015, dir Jennifer Fang. Set in a future where cosmetic brain transfers preserve social status, a single mother must decide if upgrading her body means downgrading her soul. Suggested books for deeper reading. The Care Manifesto, The Care Collective. A radical rethinking of society based on care, not capital. Lays out how public systems could prioritize human dignity over efficiency. The Wretched of the Earth, Frantz Fanon. Though not a tech critique, Fanon's deconstruction of colonial logic echoes through Common People, especially in how bodies are categorized, owned, and exhausted. Debt, The First 5,000 Years, David Graeber. Reframes our understanding of morality, obligation, and the origins of economic coercion. Explains how systems of exchange slowly become systems of control. Algorithms of Oppression, Safia Umoja Noble. An urgent dive into how supposedly neutral tech systems reproduce bias and inequality, revealing the dark architecture beneath convenient platforms. These companion works expand what Common People initiates, a confrontation with the modern world's softest forms of violence, those found not in war, but in terms of service. They ask, how much of yourself do you sign away before you even read the fine print? And more importantly, what happens when even love has a login screen? You have to understand, I was always afraid that maybe you didn't really believe it, that we had souls at all. Kathy Never Let Me Go. Ruth didn't scream when she found out she'd die before 30. Tommy didn't resist when they cut open his chest to harvest his heart. Kathy, our soft-spoken narrator, didn't fight the system that raised them as expendable bodies, and in the end, none of them tried to escape, because they knew there was no outside. Only layers of inside, where hope was rationed and love was never theirs to own. Just like Amanda, just like Mike. When Black Mirror, Common People ends, we aren't left gasping, we're left sinking. Not from shock, but from recognition. A feeling that somewhere, somehow, we already accepted these terms. Not because we're evil, but because the alternative, rage without remedy, is unbearable. And few stories capture this emotional resignation better than Never Let Me Go. Let's make one thing clear. Common People is not inspired by Never Let Me Go, but the two stand like companion echoes across decades. One is set in a tech-literate future, the other in a false past of ivy-covered schools and pastoral stillness. But peel back the genre skin, and both reveal the same bone-deep wound-a society where certain people are born not to live, but to be used, and to love, always under conditions. Never Let Me Go creates horror without menace. There are no guards, no fences, no threats. The clones are cared for in ways that mimic gentleness. They're educated, clothed, given art supplies. And yet, every stroke of kindness comes with a catch. None of it is theirs to keep. Their love lives are supervised. Their bodies are government assets. Their only freedom lies in the degree of how well they accept it. Common People adopts the same language of soft domination. Amanda is given choices. Mike is empowered to upgrade, and even euthanasia is wrapped in a user-friendly interface. The Rivermind app thanks them for their loyalty. It tells Mike, compassion is the highest tier. This is what both stories reveal with surgical precision. In modern systems of oppression, cruelty wears the mask of care. Where the guards once stood, now stand UX designers. The tragedy in both stories isn't just that people died, it's that they're taught they're not entitled to anything more than functionality. The characters don't just lose lives, they're denied narratives, and when they dare to love, that love becomes both transgression and punishment. In Never Let Me Go, the children at Hailsham are told that their artwork might prove they have souls, that love might buy them a deferral from organ donation. But this rumor turns out to be false. Their feelings were never going to save them. They were tolerated, not legitimized. In Common People, Mike's devotion to Amanda does not elevate her subscription. His sacrifices, public humiliation, job loss, finally a mercy killing, don't redeem him. There's no grace in the system, only upgrades. Thus emerges a brutal subtext in both tales. To love under domination is not noble, it's strategically useless. And yet, they love anyway. They hold hands in sterile rooms. They whisper apologies instead of accusations. They mourn, not with fury, but with grace, because when the world strips you of everything else, gentleness becomes your last rebellion. Perhaps the most haunting link between the two stories lies in their refusal to offer escape. There's no secret resistance network. No jailbreak. No final act of collective rebellion. Why? Because both worlds are built so thoroughly, so gently, so logically, that the people inside them no longer believe they deserve escape. That's the real horror. It's easy to critique evil systems when they're maintained by monsters, harder when they're maintained by politeness, customer support, and policy. In Never Let Me Go, Miss Lucy is the only teacher who tells the children the truth, that they're born to die. She's fired for it. Common People. Gaynor is never punished. She simply regrets to inform Mike that Lux is out of budget. This brings us to the ultimate convergence. In both worlds, the cost of survival is self-erasure, and the currency is belief in your own smallness. Neither Amanda nor Kathy escapes her fate. But the tragedy isn't their death, it's that somewhere along the way, they stopped thinking they could live differently. Both stories tap into what the philosopher Michel Foucault might call voluntary docility, systems that no longer require external enforcement because the internalized logic of hierarchy has been successfully implanted. Kathy becomes a carer for other donors, part of the very machine killing her. Mike becomes an entertainer for a viewership that pays for Amanda's sedation. They're not just victims, but they're functionaries. And in that, they resemble us. Every time we shrug at a hospital bill, every time we accept a privacy policy we didn't read, every time we say, I guess that's just how things are now, we're playing our part. Not because we want to, but because no one offered us a language for no. It would be easy to call these stories nihilistic, but to do so is to miss their quiet defiance. Kathy drives past an open field and imagines all her lost friends standing there, waiting. Mike presses purchase one last time, not for himself, but for Amanda's final piece. Both acts are steeped in sorrow, but not in surrender. Because even in their most defeated moments, they insist on a kind of dignity that systems cannot measure. Neither Kathy nor Mike breaks the machine, but they prove something else: the machine never fully owned them. Today, we live in a world where certain people are expected to die younger, work harder, care more, and ask for less. Whether through medical apartheid, algorithmic bias, or simply economic indifference, the tiered logic of both common people and Never Let Me Go already echoes across our institutions. We are Amanda and Kathy, but we're also the bystanders who said nothing, the designers who made the sleep timer UI, the donors, the streamers, the teachers who stopped telling the truth. So what now? Here's what these stories leave us with. Audit your consent. What have you agreed to without thinking? What terms have you accepted, not because you understood them, but because they were your only option? Practice refusal. Say no to the upgrade. Say no to the monetized grief. Say no to turning love into content. Defend the commons. Whether that means healthcare, housing, or simply the right to die, without a paywall, insist that some things must never be tiered. Reclaim the slow. Amanda's 30 minutes, Kathy's drive through the countryside. These moments remind us that even when the system schedules your existence, you can still shape your attention. Presence is still a weapon. We all complete. Final line of Never Let Me Go. And so do we. But the real question is, on whose terms? Because maybe, just maybe, the smallest revolution today is to look into that screen, that mirror, that app, and whisper, I do not agree.